guys, it's Casey, and today we're going to talk about my reading plans for the month of September. So the first thing I want to do is check back with August TBR to see if I actually managed to accomplish all of the things I set out. So I'm filming this a little bit before the end of August, so I haven't completed everything on my TBR, but I remain optimistic that I can do it. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to say that August TBR was fully completed and accomplished. And if for some reason something comes up and I'm not able to finish some of the books on August TBR, I'll just move them on to the very beginning of September. So for September's TBR, I want to go ahead and talk about the 4 TBR challenges that I've set for myself. So just like last month, I want to go ahead and set myself 4 challenges that I'm going to go through every single month. The very first one of those being a backlist title, so a book that I've had on my shelf for over a year. And for that one, I'm going to be picking Ouran High School Host Club Volume 1. So I've seen the anime for this and I absolutely love the show. And I've had this volume of the manga for several years now and I've just never actually read it, so I want to go ahead and use that for this prompt. And since September will have me back in the full swing of classes and a very full schedule once again, I want to give myself a little bit of a light read for this challenge. So Ouran High School Host Club is a romantic comedy manga that follows our main character Haruhi as she attends a very elite fancy private school for rich people, and she's there on a scholarship. While she's there, she stumbles into the room that is used by the host club, a group of boys that takes women on dates, and accidentally breaks an extremely expensive vase. Now, in order to pay that debt back, the club has decided that she will work as a host to help pay off her debt. The only thing is, the club and everyone else has mistaken her for a boy. So this is just a fun romp, a good, heartwarming, ridiculous story that I think will be a very fun thing to read and a nice break from some of the heavier stuff I've been reading, plus it's pretty short and I'd love to check it off my shelves. Once I've read this, I've read most, if not all, of the graphic novels and manga that I've got. So the next one I want to do is a new release, so something that's been released within the last 12 months, and for that I'm going to be reading The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. So I don't have a physical copy of this yet. Right now I'm planning on listening to the audiobook from the library. I do want to get my hands on a physical copy soon, so I might end up reading this as part audiobook, part physical sometime throughout the month. So The City We Became is a very unique book in premise. It's actually one that I mentioned as my most anticipated release in my mid-year book freakout tag. It is about the birth of the city of New York, and I mean that in a very literal way. So once a city becomes large enough and sort of takes on a life of its own, figuratively, these cities become these avatars, these people, and literally have a life of their own. So this story follows New York City as it tries to undergo that process. I don't know a huge amount more about the plot other than that. I also know that this story follows personifications of the different boroughs of New York City and is apparently a love letter to both New York City and science fiction and fantasy, so I'm very excited to read this one. Plus it's written by N.K. Jemisin and I've read almost everything she's ever written, so I have to put this on my list. I trust N.K. Jemisin with basically any story premise, and one that sounds as interesting and unique is definitely something she can pull off. I've heard nothing but great things about this so far. So excited. So the next prompt I give myself every month is a nonfiction, and for this I'm going to be reading Educated by Tara Westover. So Educated is a memoir about this woman who was raised in a survivalist cult sort of a situation for most of her young life, and in that setting she had no formal education and was given a very skewed view of the world. So this book follows her life story and how things were back when she was a child and how she grew and eventually left that environment, and how integrating back into mainstream society went, and her efforts to get herself a formal high-level education. So I love listening to memoirs on audiobooks. There's something about listening to someone tell their life story that is like very special to me. I also know that this memoir has gotten a ton of buzz and I've heard a lot of great reviews of it, and it's one I've had on hold at the library for a hot minute now, and it should become available right at the beginning of September. So that's going to be my nonfiction pick for the month. So the final of the 4 challenges I set for my TBR every month is a short story collection, poetry collection, or classic. And this month I'm going to be reading Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. Look at how pretty this edition is. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but it's got the silver sprayed edges, beautiful maps, the ribbon bookmark. Very exciting. So Peter Pan is a classic fairy tale that follows the darling children as they are swept off to Neverland by Peter Pan. And it talks a lot about their adventures in Neverland and their struggles with growing up. Peter Pan is a story I've loved ever since I was a child, but to be honest, I've really only ever been exposed to the Disney movie version of Peter Pan, so I'm very excited to actually read the book. This is also one I've had on my shelf for a little while, so I definitely want to go ahead and check this off the list. So those are the books for my challenges. So those are the 4 books that I have to read by the end of the month, but there are several other books that I want to read that I'm going to talk about next. So next I want to talk about holds I have at the library that are going to become available in the month of September. So other than Educated, which I already talked about, I think there's only one hold from the library that's going to become available, and that is Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire. So this is a story about children who have been whisked away to fantastical worlds who are dealing with the reality of coming back home from that. And it follows sort of this school or this home, I'm not exactly sure, for these kinds of children. So I've read Middle Game by Shauna Maguire and I really loved the writing style in that, so I'm excited to see what she does in a more short form novella. I think there are 5 books out in this series so far. It's definitely one I've been wanting to get into for a while now. I've heard a ton of great reviews on it, especially some of the earlier entries into this series, so I'm excited to be getting to it in September. So I can also tell you right now that I want to get to Proven Guilty, which is the 8th book in the Dresden Files series. So I've been making my way through the Dresden Files series since I think June, and really since the 6th one, which I'm going to talk about in my wrap-up, has really ramped things up in terms of my interest in this series. I've been holding off on listening to Proven Guilty because I don't have time left in my August TBR, but you bet, like, September 1st, I'm gonna get in there and read that because I'm so excited. I know I've talked about it in most of my videos so far, but in case this is one of the first you've seen, I'm gonna go ahead and give a brief synopsis of what the Dresden Files are about. So the Dresden Files follows wizard for hire Harry Dresden as he works as a private investigator and a consultant for the Chicago Police Department to solve all kinds of crimes perpetrated by the supernatural. So I listened to the audiobook for each of these in like a day, maybe 2 sometimes, and every single time they're just a very fun romp. They're so enjoyable, they're so fast-paced and easy to get through. While I have my problems with the series and some of the entries more specifically, overall this is a series I've been really enjoying going through, so I'm definitely gonna get to Proven Guilty, possibly also the 9th one this month. I have been reading about 2 of them a month, but we'll see what happens. So another book I very much want to get to in the month of September is The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. So I read The Dragon Republic back in July and it immediately became one of my favorite fantasy books that I've ever read. So this is the 2nd book in that series and the 3rd book comes out in November. I'm so excited. So The Poppy War is a grim, dark fantasy novel based on Chinese history that follows the main character Rin. And Rin wants to go to a prestigious military academy and fights to get there, even though once she's there, she's sort of looked down upon and discriminated against because she is a poor, darker-skinned individual from the southern region of the country. And this book follows her time at this academy and then eventually when war breaks out and follows the trials and the horrors of this war. This is definitely not a light read by any stretch of the imagination, but it was so good and I've been wanting to read The Dragon Republic pretty much ever since I put The Poppy War down. But I'm trying to like space it out a little bit. I'm pretty good at getting through series very quickly, but since The Burning God comes out in November, I figured I'd put a month of space between reading The Poppy War and The Dragon Republic, and then that way I'll have October off, and then in November I can get to The Burning God and finish this series. If you haven't picked it up yet, now's a great time to start. All 3 of them are about to be available. So I've avoided reading the synopses or anything too much about the Dragon Republic. All I know is that it follows the fallout of the events that happened at the end of the Poppy War, and that is all I want to know. I just want to go in this completely blind and ready to experience this. So my TBR is getting pretty full, so this is a little bit iffy, but I'd also like to get to A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. So this is the 2nd book in the Wayfarer series. The 1st book, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, is now one of, if not my favorite books of all time since I read it. And I haven't actually continued on with the series. That 1st book impacted me emotionally so much, I have so many thoughts and feelings about it, that I wanted to wait until some of that kind of subsided before moving on to the 2nd book, especially since the 2nd book is not a direct continuation of the story. It follows the events of the 1st one, but it follows a slightly different cast of characters, so you're not continuing on with the story of the crew of the Wayfarer like you were in the 1st book. So again, since this is the 2nd book in a series, I can't talk too much about the plot of this, nor have I looked too much into the plot of this, but I know this follows like some of the side characters or some of the characters we met in the 1st book, but not the original crew, and it follows them as they go on a new adventure, and I think this adventure is focused a lot on self-discovery, which was a major theme of the 1st one, but I think that is one of the major components of this one. And I've been putting this off because I was waiting for that impact to pass, and it never did, and I'm scared that this one won't live up, and I'm so nervous, but I'm so excited because that 1st book was incredible, and if this one comes anywhere close, I'm gonna have a great time. So my TBR is officially at capacity and I'm gonna add one more book to it anyway. This is an extremely tentative book, but that is going to be The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. So as I'm filming this, I am in the middle of reading The Final Empire, which is the 1st book in the Mistborn trilogy, and this is the 2nd, and I haven't been able to put the 1st one down since I started reading it. I have no idea how this 1st book ends. If it ends in a way that I have to know what happens next, there is a decent chance I will pick this one up despite the fact that it's huge and I don't have time for it. I am so engrossed in that first novel that there is a decent chance that I am going to be thinking about it over and over again and want to plow through to the second book. Like I said, I tend to finish series very, very quickly, sometimes even back to back. So spreading it out over a couple months of a TBR is quite a challenge for me, so there is a chance that this one just happens anyway. So the Mistborn trilogy follows the premise of what if the Dark Lord won. So it is set in a world where the Chosen One has failed and the Dark Lord has reigned supreme for thousands of years. And in this world, individuals have magic based on the consumption of metals. So certain metals will give you specific powers, and if you are able to wield multiple magics, you are what is known as a Mistborn. So the first book follows our main character Vin as she joins up with a ragtag group of thieves and criminals as they work to overthrow the final empire. Once again, I refuse to look at any synopses, anything about this second one, because I just want to go in ready to experience it. But alright guys, that's gonna be my September TBR. If you've read any of these books, please comment down below to get me hyped up for them. I'm so excited for a lot of these. And I've definitely given myself too many things to read. That's all I have for you guys today. If you want to follow what I'm reading, there's a link to my Goodreads in the description below. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time.